Our Fantasy Book Bingo is a yearly reading challenge that runs from April 1st to March 31st of the next year. It provides 25 prompts in the shape of a bingo board, and the goal is to complete the prompts and hopefully step out of your comfort zone a little bit while doing so. So today I will be talking about my plans for the Book Bingo Challenge, my recommendations when I have them, and requests for some help when I need it. I did complete this last year. I blacked out the board in standard mode, not hard mode. I will put a link to my video about that 2024 wrap up in the description if you want to see my thoughts on those books from last year. But for those not familiar with this challenge already, I'll review the rules of the bingo board. So you can't use the same book more than once on the card. You can't repeat an author on the card, and only one square can be a reread. You can substitute one square with a prompt from a previous year. I didn't do that last year, and I guess I'll just see if I feel like I need to do it this year. There is a hard mode version of this challenge. I'm personally not very fussed about doing hard mode for this because I don't read a high enough volume of fantasy where I feel like I want to further restrict my options. I'll try and get hard mode if I already have something on my TBR that counts, but just hitting the normal prompts in many cases already feels like a comfortable stretch for me. That said, if I know something I'm reading or recommending fits the hard mode version of the prompt, I will let you know. Finally, I'm sharing my initial reading plan, but some of these plans are more set in stone than others. If you have a strong recommendation for one of these prompts, please let me know. I could easily be swayed away from some of my initial ideas here if I get a strong enough recommendation. And I guess one other thing I'll say for anyone who's watching that's new to my channel, first of all, welcome, thanks for watching. I got back into reading last year after a pretty long hiatus for grad school. So I'm still catching up on some pretty basic popular books and series because I just had a 7-year gap in in reading fiction especially. And so feel free to recommend popular books that you would expect someone who reads a lot to already have read. I might not have read them. And in fact, I'm using this challenge as a way to sort of play catch up in the fantasy sci-fi space. So with that exposition out of the way, let's get into it. The first prompt on the bingo board is Knights and Paladins. One of the protagonists is a paladin or knight, and hard mode is the character has an oath or promise to keep. For this, I am planning to read The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman. I already had plans to read this year. It's the prequel to The Black-Tongued Thief, and it is about a female knight who is fighting in a special unit alongside other women against a goblin horde. I really enjoyed The Black-Tongued Thief, which referenced these earlier goblin wars quite a lot, so I'm excited to get to this one. I would recommend The Bright Sword by Lev Grossman for this prompt. It follows the Knights of the Round Table after the death of King Arthur, and yeah, it hits hard mode. They're making oaths all over the place as far as I remember. Prompt 2 is Hidden Gem, a book with under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. New releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. Follow the spirit of the square. Hard mode is that the book was published more than 5 years ago. I'm planning to read The Winged Histories by Sofia Samatar. I read and loved her short story collection, Tender, for last year's bingo board, and so I'd like to try something else from her. The Winged Histories was published in 2016, but currently only has 880 ratings. So if I can, as long as not too many people rate and review it in the next couple of months, I'll try and get to it before it has 1,000. I don't have a good recommendation for this one, except for Tender, which would also count for hard mode here. Prompt 3 is published in the 80s. Read a book that was first published anytime between 1980 and 1989. Hard mode is that it's written by an author of color. This one, I don't have a clear front runner for. I'm going to be continuing the Discworld series this year, and Pyramids is next up, which would fit for the 1980s, not for hard mode. But the Discworld books are likely to fit many of these prompts, and Terry Pratchett can only go on one square, so I might be able to use this as an opportunity to go after hard mode. After all, I've seen tons of people reading Dawn by Octavia E. Butler for this square. I have not read Octavia Butler yet, so this would be a great opportunity to do that, but I don't know if Dawn is where I want to start with Octavia Butler. Other options for hard mode I'm considering are Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, and a more obscure one that has piqued my interest is Hadriana in All My Dreams by René Depeste. That is a zombie story by a Haitian author, which seems like it would be out of my comfort zone in a great way. Prompt 4 is high fashion. Read a book where clothing or fashion or fiber arts are important to the plot. This can be a crafty main character or a setting where fashion itself is explored, and hard mode is the main character makes clothes or fibers. I love this prompt. I think it's very interesting and very specific without being too niche. For this prompt, I will be reading Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. That is a historical fantasy that fits hard mode. That's been on my radar for a bit, and this seems like a great reason to pick it up. I believe Howl's Moving Castle would also work for hard mode. Sophie works in a hat shop. Prompt 5 is Down with the System. Read a book in which a main plot revolves around disrupting a system. Hard mode is that this is not a government system. And based on what I've seen, I think hard mode is kind of throwing people for a loop on this one, because the degree to which government becomes entwined with capitalist and social systems is pretty blurry sometimes. But I think for this one, I am going to go with Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, which I've been told counts for hard mode. Blood over Brighthaven has also been given as a hard mode recommendation, but I think I'm going to save ML Wong for a different prompt on this board. Prompt 6 is Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. The geometry non-Euclidean. The volume bigger on the inside. The directions merely a suggestion. Hard mode is that at least 50% of the book takes place within the impossible space. I have Dungeon Crawler Carl down for this square at the moment. It's really caught on fire both on BookTube and the people I know in my life. So I'm feeling a little bit of FOMO, and I feel like I need to get on the train before everyone leaves me behind. And people recommended the series for this square, so that seems like what I'll go with. Prompt 7 is a book in parts. Read a book that is separated into large sections within the main text. This can include things like acts, parts, days, years, and so on, but has to be more than just chapter breaks. Hard mode is that the book has 4 or more parts. This is another one where I have some ideas, but I don't feel very committed to anything, so happy to take recommendations here. This also feels like a prompt that I could more easily encounter on my own without picking up a book specifically with this prompt in mind. But looking at the recommendation thread, it looks like Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova is broken into 4 sections and is something I was already looking to read this year, maybe more in spooky season. I'll pick it up. I was also already thinking about rereading The Tempest, and that would fit for hard mode as well. My recommendation for this prompt is The Gilda Stories by Joel Gomez, and if it's hard mode, because it's split into at least 4 sections based on different time periods. It's a story about a Black lesbian vampire from the time she escapes slavery in the 1850s through to a future in the 2050s. Prompt 8 is Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. And hard mode is that there are multiple pantheons involved. This is actually a little tough for me. This is not the corner of the fantasy space I usually hang out in. I'm more of a high fantasy person than a mythology pantheon person. So do give me your recommendations if you have them, but this might end up being my Discworld square since Small Gods should fit here for hard mode. I was also thinking about reading The Odyssey before the Christopher Nolan movie comes out next year, so I assume that would fit here. Recommendations, books I've already read are both of Madeline Miller's books, Circe and The Song of Achilles. If you haven't gotten to those yet, they would fit right here, not for hard mode. Prompt 9 is last in a series. Read the final entry in a series. Hard mode is the series is 4 or more books long. Here's the thing, I don't have that many series going right now, especially sci-fi or fantasy series. The ones I do have going either aren't finished publishing yet or it's Discworld and I have 33 more books left to go. Now, I don't really want to pick up the final book without reading the intermediate books. I'm more or less reading them in chronological order at this point. So this might be a little tougher than it looks, but if the final book in C.S. Bacot's Dark Rise trilogy is published in the next year, I could use that, but the date for that release hasn't been announced yet. Otherwise, there are a couple series I expect to be starting, and so this could just be an extra kick to finish those more quickly than I might have otherwise. I have, for example, the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin on hold at the library right now, so maybe I could speedrun that trilogy and slot The Stone Sky in here. If anyone is in a similar spot to me and would like a duology recommendation, so you only have to read 2 books to get the last in a series, then I would like to recommend The Hidden Palace by Helena Wecker, which is a sequel to The Golem and the Jinni. This is a series that is set in New York City in the early 20th century, and it's about a golem created by a rabbi and a jinni from Syria, and it's got this great supporting cast of Eastern European, Jewish, and Syrian immigrants. Prompt 10 is a book club or read-along book. Read a book that was or is officially a group read on Our Fantasy. Hard mode is to read and participate in an Our Fantasy book club or read-along during the bingo year. This is one that I will probably try to do hard mode if I can, so I will just be keeping an eye out for the book choices of the book clubs on Reddit. They have a bunch of book clubs with different themes, including a New Voices book club and an LGBTQ book club, which both sound interesting to me. But I also saw that there was a Hugo Award read-along in motion right now over the next couple of months. So I might also try to see if I could fit that in, because there are a few books on the Hugo Award list that I would be interested in reading. Prompt 11 is Parent Protagonist. Read a book where a main character has a child to care for. The child does not have to be biologically related to the main character, and hard mode is that the child is also a major character in the story. I have The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong down for this since it seems to count for hard mode, and it was on my want to read list already. In terms of recommendations, this wouldn't count for hard mode, but The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin has a parent main character, and it was one of my favorite reads from last year. Prompt 12 is epistolary. The book must prominently feature any of the following: diary or journal entries, letters, messages, newspaper clippings, transcripts, etc. And hard mode is that the book is told entirely in epistolary format. Apparently, Piranesi by Susanna Clark fits this prompt for hard mode, and that is probably what I will read. But that also makes me realize that I actually have no idea what Piranesi is about, and the fact that this fit the prompt, it was kind of surprising to me, but makes me want to read it more. This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone fits here for hard mode as well. I read it last year. My recommendation for that one is not to listen to the audiobook because it just felt like the kind of book where I needed to go back and reread sentences a lot, and that doesn't make it a great audiobook fit. The Emily Wilde series would also fit here for hard mode. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but I think that series would have been better if it weren't epistolary, but it is. It's a sort of field journal style, so it works for this. Prompt 13 is published in 2025, a book published for the first time in 2025. No reprints or new editions. Hard mode is that it's also a debut novel, as in it's the author's first published novel. At a minimum, I know I'll be reading Long Live Chaos by Sarah Rees Brennan this year, which is the sequel to Long Live Evil. I think it's not unlikely I pick up several more sci-fi fantasy books that are published this year, so if I can, I will sub in a debut. Prompt 14 is author of color. Read a book written by a person of color. Hard mode is to read a horror novel by a person of color. I will try for hard mode on this one just because I don't read a lot of horror normally, but I've been wanting to read some indigenous horror specifically. I know the Buffalo Hunter Hunter has recently come out, so that is what I'm tentatively slotting into this square. But I also haven't read anything by Stephen Graham Jones yet, so if I should start somewhere else, or if you have other recommendations for indigenous horror novels, I'm happy to take them. Prompt 15 is small press or self-published. Read a book published by a small press, not one of the big 5 publishing houses or Bloomsbury, or self-published. If a formerly self-published book has been picked up by a publisher, it only counts if you read it before it was picked up. Hard mode is that the book has under 100 ratings on Goodreads or is written by a marginalized author. I looked through the Reddit recommendations for this one, and the one that caught my eye was The Revenge of Captain Vessia by Leslie Allen, which fits hard mode as it is written by a trans author and it has fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads. It's got vampire pirates, and I'm intrigued. The Reddit recommendation thread also called out that In Other Lands by Sarah Rees Brennan was published by a small press, and that's one I read quite a while ago before my hiatus, but it was a phenomenal queer coming-of-age story that plays with the concept of portal fantasy, and I feel very confident in recommending it. So if you're not fussed about hard mode, do pick that one up. Prompt 16 is biopunk. Read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. Hard mode is that there is no electricity-based technology. I'm thinking of doing The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett for this. It's a really popular new series. I am interested in giving it a shot. I've heard good things and it seems like it counts for hard mode. That said, not super tied to this one, so let me know if you think something else would fit here that you have a recommendation for. In terms of my own recommendations, I believe that Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood would fit here for hard mode. Oryx and Crake is set in a dystopian future where genetic engineering is rampant. There's lots of genetic splicing and a new breed of humans. It's a heavy read, so look into it before you pick it up, but it was very good. Prompt 17 is Elves and or Dwarves. Read a book that features the classical fantasy archetype of elves and or dwarves. They do not have to fit the classic tropes, but must be named as elves and or dwarves or be easily identified as such. Hard mode is that the main character is an elf or a dwarf. For this, I have The Bone Harp by Victoria Goddard, which fits hard mode. I've heard good things about this one. and it seems like it's about a bard warrior elf on his way home. It's an after the war type story. This would also count for hidden gems, I believe. Not for hard mode. It was released last year, but it has under 400 ratings on Goodreads. I would love to know if anyone has a recommendation for this category with a dwarf main character. That seems like a huge gap in the literature. What exactly is going on there? But also, I know that like when I'm playing video game RPGs, I always play as a dwarf, but I know that's really unpopular. So what do people have against dwarves exactly? Prompt 18 is LGBTQIA protagonist. Read a book where a main character is under the LGBTQIA plus umbrella, and hard mode is that the character is marginalized on at least one additional axis, such as being a person of color, disabled, a member of an ethnic, religious, cultural minority in the story, etc. For this, I have Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco. I don't know a lot about it except that it's gay vampires. I'm racking up the queer vampire books for this bingo board. Speaking of, let me recommend the Guild of Stories again for hard mode for this one. Black Lesbian Vampire. Prompt 19 is 5 sci-fi fantasy short stories. Any short SFF story, as long as there are 5 of them. Hard mode is to read an entire SFF anthology or collection. For this, I believe I will read 5 Ways to Forgiveness by Ursula K. Le Guin, which fits hard mode as it is a collection of linked short stories. I read my first Le Guin last year with both The Dispossessed and Left Hand of Darkness, and I want to check out more from her. I will also shout out Tender, which I read for this category last year. I loved 90% of those stories, which is an incredible hit rate in my opinion. Very good. Prompt 20 is Stranger in a Strange Land. Read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character or characters, if there are a group, must be either visiting or moving in as a minority. Hard mode is that the main character is an immigrant or refugee. Right off the bat, I want to highlight again The Golem and the Ginny by Helena Wecker for this hard mode square. It's a beautiful book that is at its core about immigrants in early 20th century New York City. For myself, I'm thinking about Exit West by Mohsin Hamid for this one, which is also suitable for hard mode as I understand it is very much about immigration and the migrant experience with magical doors as portals. Prompt 21 is Recycle a bingo square. Use a square from a previous year as long as it does not repeat one on the current card, as in you can't have 2 book club squares. Hard mode is not very clever of us, but do the hard mode for the original square. I have not really investigated what I want to do with this one yet. I'm starting a lot of new series with this list so far, so if I can use this to make progress on a different series that I already have going, I will probably try to do that. Prompt 22 is Cozy SFF. Cozy is up to your preferences for what you find comforting, but the genre typically features relatable characters, low stakes, minimal conflict, and a happy ending. Hard mode is that the author is new to you. I have not read TJ Klune yet, so The House in the Cerulean Sea seems kind of like a no-brainer here. My experience with cozy works are generally that they're fine, but it's never going to be my favorite thing. I did read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree last year, and I liked it. I also consider Discworld cozy for the most part, though it predates the marketing term cozy fantasy. Prompt 23 is Generic Title. Read a book that has one or more of the following words in the title: blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword, or throne. Plural is allowed. Hard mode is that the title contains more than one of the listed words or contains at least one word and a color, number, or animal, real or mythical. If the sequel in the Dark Rise series is published and has the word dark in the title, I could do that. Otherwise, I've got no clue here what I'm going to pick up, so I could use some help. Prompt 24 is not a book. Do something new besides reading a book. Watch a TV show, play a game, learn how to summon a demon. Okay, maybe not that last one. Spend time with fantasy, science fiction, or horror in another format. Movies, video games, tabletop RPGs, board games, etc. all count. There is no rule about how many episodes of a show will count or whether or not you have to finish a video game. New is the key word here. We do not want you to play a new save on a game you have played before or to watch a new episode of a show you enjoy. You can do a whole new tabletop RPG or a new campaign in a system you have played before, but not a new session in a game you have been playing. Hard mode is to write and post a review to our fantasy. Okay, so after reading the full prompt, I realized that maybe my thought here wouldn't work. Let me know your take on it in the comments. I was initially going to use this to finish a video game that I started last year but never completed. These were games, there are two options here. I got maybe 10 to 20% into them and I never finished. This would be Baldur's Gate 3 and Dragon Age Veilguard, both fantasy RPGs. I would like to finish those games because I think it's just sort of a matter of competing priorities. So it's nice to get an incentive to prioritize those games here. But I'm sure also if, that's not really in the spirit of the prompt, I will be playing a different video game or board game that would count here. Finally, prompt 25 is pirates. Read a book where characters engage in piracy. Hard mode is not a seafaring pirate. I think I'm going to prioritize reading a sequel over reading for hard mode in this case, and I will be reading Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch, which is the second book in the Gentleman Bastard series, which involves normal seafaring pirates. I would be curious if anyone has ideas or recommendations for non-seafaring pirates in speculative fiction, because even though I'm not likely to do hard mode for this prompt, I kind of love that hard mode prompt conceptually. Whether that's space pirates or air pirates or tech pirates. And with that, that is all 25. Please remember to leave a comment with any of your recommendations or your thoughts on any of the books I mentioned. I'm very influenceable, so let me know what you think. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.